it just moved a lot quicker than I anticipated. Like, the hours just started stacking up quickly, and the more I flew, the more I got into it. Next thing you know, I blinked and 7 months went by, and here we are sitting with a commercial instrument. It's pretty wild.
Hey guys, I'm here at the Flight Academy in Van Nuys, California, and we are about to do an interview with a recent student here named Jack Ulrichs. Now, he has just completed his commercial pilot certificate, and he did his private, his instrument, and his commercial, all of it together in less than 8 months. And beyond that, what's I think even more impressive is that he did it for about $30,000. The other thing is that he already has a job lined up. So I think he's going to have some really good insight into how to get a commercial pilot's license on a budget, and also how to not take years to do it. When I did my training, I took about 10 months just to get my private pilot certificate. So I want to learn this guy's secrets too. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the interview, but real quick guys, if you enjoy videos like this, please consider subscribing right now. Okay, now let's check this out. All right, Jack, how you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
Great, man. So congratulations on passing your commercial check
I
ride.
appreciate it.
Yeah, yesterday, right?
Yesterday.
So you've done, PPL, instrument, and now commercial. You did it in like a really short amount of time. I mean, it was like 7 months and like a couple weeks, something like that?
Yep, 7 months and a couple weeks. First flight was August 11th.
August 11th, and today's March 26th.
March 26th.
Yeah, the day after your check ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, whether they're getting a PPL, they just want to fly for fun, or they want to do it as a career like what you're doing, they're always interested in how can I do it in a short amount of time, and how can I save money?
Yeah.
And you've kind of aced both of those things, right? So in terms of like hours, how many hours do you have right now?
252.
252.
Yep.
And 250 is what's required for commercial.
Yep, so I finished up 250, got my endorsement for the commercial check ride, and then flew over to Camarillo and finished up with 252 hours.
So do you recall when you did your PPL, how many hours you had then?
Finished PPL at around 60.
60 hours?
Yep.
And then your instrument?
Instrument 200.
200.
Right around 200, and then commercial right on the dot 250.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And it was 7 months and a couple weeks. We were talking earlier. You said you've got kind of a ballpark estimate of how much money you spent.
Yeah.
And like all the way through.
Yeah. So PPL was around 10 or 12,000.
Yeah.
And then all in, it was about 30,000 from zero to commercial.
Okay. So that's a super low number, right? And what were kind of the key things, like areas where you were able to save money? Like what kind of stuff?
Find a friend.
Find a friend.
Find a friend to fly with, and share the airplane with them, and go on simulated cross-country flights.
Right.
And then your hourly goes from 150 an hour to rent the airplane down to 75.
Right.
So you do 100 hours at $75 an hour. It's only $7,500.
So obviously a big chunk, in terms of the hours, you need the 250 to get commercial, but even for the instrument, right, you need all that cross-country time and the simulated instrument time, right?
Yep.
So that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
You're
bulk of my
flying.
training was flying simulated cross-country with a safety pilot.
Okay.
So about 120 hours of that, just
Okay.
shooting approaches at night, or picking 4 airports and flying as much cross-country as we possibly could. That was the most fun part of the training, in my opinion.
And then that's a big chunk of the hours, and so obviously when you're sharing it with another person, you're cutting it in half, the cost of
Correct.
that in half, right? Okay.
Yeah, so it was about 90 hours of dual, and probably 30 solo, and the rest were just taking turns as a safety pilot with a buddy.
Okay. And that was another thing we were talking about. 30 hours of solo time is really not that much. I think when you say like, okay, overall I've got 250 hours or 252, right?
Yeah.
But when you're trying to get those ratings, especially the instrument one, there's not a big advantage to really doing solo flights, right?
Yeah, if you're trying to dial in the instrument stuff, you need someone sitting on the right looking outside of the airplane while you can't see from the foggles.
Right.
So, yeah, flying with someone else that's training on the same progression as you is ideal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other ways you were saving money, I mean, how did you do your ground school? Like, what was that?
I did all my ground at home.
Okay.
So I did 2 ground lessons. That was just to figure out the flight planning at the very beginning, the paper flight planning. And then the rest was a mix of YouTube, books, podcasts, asking Mo, and he's sitting behind the desk, questions that I can't find answers to.
Right.
But just figuring out what works for you and what your learning style might be. For me, that was watching videos on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for preparing for the written test, what was there something that you found worked really well for you?
I used Sporties for private,
Okay.
which helped me out. I got my written test before I got in the airplane.
Oh, wow.
So I think that gave me a head start.
Right.
Just getting in the airplane and having a decent understanding of what was going on.
Yeah.
And then for instrument and commercial, I did Shepherd.
Right.
And
Shepherd Air. Okay.
Shepherd Air is perfect for your written. Get your written done, and then whatever you need to do for yourself to get ready for the oral for the check ride.
Okay. Now, the other big thing here, right, is you already have a job lined up.
Yeah.
Not only did you get you got your 250, 252 hours and commercial check ride done, you're ready to go, but you've got a job that you're going to, like, in just a few days, right? You're going to start training for it.
I start training to do my tail wheel endorsement and my aero towing next week in Florida.
Yeah.
In the Bobby Bailey.
Okay.
And the Dragonfly, the ultralight. So we're going to Tennessee to tow some hang gliders.
Wow.
Yeah. And I feel pretty well networked with my past as a flight instructor teaching paragliding and speed flying.
Right.
So I was able to reach out to some friends that are slightly ahead of me on the airplanes, and was able to network that gig towing hang gliders out of Flight Park in Tennessee.
Okay.
So that's where we're going next.
Yeah, and you had that job set up before you even finished your commercial, right?
I had that job set up at about 200 hours.
Okay.
And so the pressure was on.
Yeah.
So I set the deadline for the commercial, and we made it happen. It was a little stressful, but Mo and Sam kept the airplane running, and SoCal weather was perfect.
Yeah.
Got the check ride date and powered through it.
So you were talking about paragliding, right? And you do, paragliding and speed flying and tandem stuff and paramotor, right? A lot of that. So what kind of flight experience in general did you have before you started training on the airplane? Because I think a lot of people, it makes a big difference sometimes if they're coming in totally clueless about aviation in general versus, they've had some experience either with airplanes or something else. So talk a little bit about your previous experience.
Yeah, so I've been flying paragliders, speed wings, and paramotors for about 8 years, teaching for the last 6.
Okay.
I've usually spend between 250 and 300 days in the air a year. So I think coming into airplanes, just feeling comfortable with my feet off the ground helped a ton. Just understanding basic aerodynamic principles and weather.
Yeah.
Understanding the weather was huge.
Right.
Because the weather has a huge impact when you're flying.
Sure.
A trash bag with dental floss attached to it. So I think there was a huge advantage coming into airplanes having that aviation experience under my belt. But for people that are coming into flying airplanes without any aviation experience, I'd say the most important thing you can do is get your written test done and do some ground school before you even get in the airplane. So that way when you're in the airplane flying, you have more bandwidth to focus on flying the actual airplane and not all the external factors going on around you.
Okay. So the other thing that I would imagine made a big difference is that you were pretty much completely dedicated to getting this done. Like you didn't have other things that were taking up your time, and you kind of decided beforehand, like, hey, I'm going to get my commercial license. That's what I'm going to do. And so you live right down the street from the hangar.
Yeah.
And you were spending a lot of time. You weren't trying to balance this with like a day job or something like that.
Yeah, I went all in. I knew I wanted to do it. And I live in my van 2 blocks down the street from the hangar, so I spend most of the day just in the office or in the airplane. My name's on the schedule 7 days a week, and I just showed up every single day. And we're fortunate to be in SoCal where the weather's been flyable almost all the time. And I think the best way to do it is to go all in if you have that opportunity, fully submerge yourself in the process and try to stack your lessons as close together as you can, because the more time that goes by between your lessons, the more you're going to forget naturally, and you're going to have to repeat those lessons until they stick.
Right.
So flying consistently, I think, helps a ton with the progression throughout the training.
You did your instrument check ride and your commercial check ride like within 2 weeks of each other, right?
Yeah, instrument and then commercial 2 weeks later, and that was due to bad weather on my original instrument check ride date, so I was only able to complete the oral and then discontinue for the flight portion, and it took a full month to reschedule that. And then 10 days later I did my commercial check ride, so I had to figure out the maneuvers pretty quick. But that was fun.
You know, you're talking about $30K to get your commercial license, and that's I think a best case scenario in a lot of ways, right? But if somebody can dedicate, let's say, 35, 40K and maybe a year, it seems like totally doable.
Yeah.
And if somebody plans that out in advance, and like you're saying, like you live right down the street, you were here every day you could be here, which was most days.
Yeah.
And I think that's doable for most people.
Yeah, I originally planned on 50,000 and 12 months.
Right.
That was the original kind of guess. That's what most people quoted me. I didn't know about the safety pilot thing at the time. I think, 30,000 seems to be one of the lower numbers I've heard of. And it just moved a lot quicker than I anticipated. Like, the hours just started stacking up quickly, and the more I flew, the more I got into it. Next thing you know, I blinked and 7 months went by, and here we are sitting in a commercial instrument. It's pretty wild. And also having a school with an in-house mechanic that's doing all the work and making sure that the airplane's flying with a good instructor that has availability, that's stoked to teach you, helps tremendously. And having a motivated friend to, show up at the airport at 6 a.m. to go fly around for 4 or 5 hours at a time helps a lot. I couldn't have done it by myself.
Yeah.
God, no. Yeah, having Nirvan to fly with and to motivate with was huge. We were kind of feeding off of each other.
Yeah.
Which is great. So if you can find a buddy, that's going to be awesome for you.
And he's pretty far along too, right?
Nirvan's at 250 hours. He's got his commercial oral done. Bless his heart, he gave me his check ride date because the weather looked better.
Yeah.
So we switched. The weather was bad. He only got the oral done, discontinued the flight for weather, and I got to take his 70-degree blue sunny day and got the whole thing done. So thanks Nirvan. Appreciate it, bro.
So this is a Part 61 flight school versus 141, and I think kind of the real beauty of the Part 61 is that it's a lot more sort of customizable in terms of the training, like what works for somebody's schedule, that kind of thing. So you can do it really fast, like you, or like I took, I don't know, I think I took like 10 months to get my PPL, right?
Yeah.
So I went a lot slower. So what was the training like here? Like, and kind of what were some of the highlights of it for you?
Here it was totally freestyle. It was show up to your lesson prepared with what it is you want to work on that day. And for everyone, that's different. So you might breeze through one section and it clicks, move through it, go to the next thing. And then you might get stuck for a week, whatever that might be. Spend more time working on that. There's no rigorous list of things that you need to complete. It's move at your own pace, work on the things that you as an individual need to work on. And I like that a lot because you can take a week off and not fly if you need that time to do something else, or you can show up 7 days a week and fly if that's what you want to do. So Part 61 was cool, and Mo and Sam are awesome, and I would book the airplane for 2-3 days at a time, and we'd take it cross country to Arizona and go on trips, fly to the flight park to go paragliding for a day and come back. So we mixed it up, it wasn't just pattern practice area approaches. It was, fun adventure flying mixed in with the training, which kept it fresh.
And you need that cross-country time anyway.
You need the cross-country time anyway, and when you find a good school with good instructors that set you up for success and they trust you with the keys to the airplane, and they'll let you take it cool places and you get to do fun things. Yeah.
So the Arizona trip. Tell me a little more about that.
So we went to Arizona. I took Nirvan. We loaded up camping gear, and the plan was to go to Phoenix, where we had a buddy with a paramotor school, and he's got a trike, and we were going to go do some paramotoring. So we flew the airplane, Nirvan and I, over to Phoenix, landed. My buddy picked us up from the airport, took us back to his house, went paramotoring that night, crashed on his couch. Next morning, drove back to the airport, and then flew to Sedona. Landed in Sedona at that beautiful strip up on the plateau, a bunch of red rock mountains everywhere, and hung out for a couple hours. Loaded back in the airplane, and then flew to Saboba Flight Park, where we did some speed flying and camped in some tents for a night, and then flew back here. So it was a cool little triangle.
And that was all part of your training?
That was all part of training. Yeah, so Part 61 allows you to kind of freestyle and have some fun with it.
So one thing I noticed in your training, like pretty early on, you seemed really comfortable with the radio calls, and that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially like, taxi instructions.
Van Nuys ground, Archer November 84015 at Alpha 2, checkpoint 1 with Juliet, ready for taxi.
Archer 8475, Van Nuys ground, running 16 right, taxi via Alpha Charlie.
16 right via Alpha Charlie, 015.
So was there anything in particular that you did to practice your radio calls, your radio work?
Yeah, so from the paragliding background as an instructor, I spent a lot of time on radios, which I think gave me a little bit of an advantage. But my first few weeks, it was super intimidating, especially at Van Nuys, dealing with the radios. I would get on live ATC with my AirPods in, and I'd stare at the airport diagram with the traffic, live traffic, with the tail numbers of the airplanes flying around with live ATC. I'd look at where the airplane is and look at the tail number, listen to what ATC had to say to that airplane, and then what their reply was, and where their location was on the airport, and would just start to paint these mental images of where that airplane is in the pattern based on those calls, and just listening to the radio on live ATC when I'm not flying the airplane. It starts to sink in. But at the end of the day, you realize that the radios, it's just someone giving you basic instructions. Listen to what they have to say, process it in your head, and simply say back what they said to you. So at first it might seem intimidating, but as you move through your training, you'll realize that someone's giving you 2 or 3 commands that are black and white simple. And you're giving them you're just reading back the same thing they said to you and moving through the call.
It's very easy when you're listening to the radio to hear a student. Right, it usually is pretty obvious, when somebody's going really slow and there's a lot of like 1 6 right,
Yeah.
But you, I remember watching the footage from your cross country flight, right?
Yeah.
And it was just like bam, 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 bam. You
Yeah.
sounded like an experienced pilot.
Oh, nice, thank you.
All right, Jack. Thanks a ton, man, for telling us all about it, man. And you got a new job, lined up, ready to go. So good luck at that, man. Have
Appreciate
fun.
it. Thanks a bunch.
Okay, guys, so just to wrap up here, one of the biggest money-saving techniques that he was talking about was doing the combination cross-country flight and simulated instrument flying with another pilot, another student pilot. So to clarify, what he was doing was that he was flying with his friend Nirvan, who's also a student working on his instrument training. And what they would do is they would fly together while one of them is under the hood or wearing foggles doing their instrument training, and the other one is acting as safety pilot. Now, when they're doing that, in that situation where you have one person doing instrument training, one person acting as a safety pilot, they can both log time simultaneously. And typically what people do is they will fly somewhere and then they land and switch positions and have the opposite roles on the way back. And since there's 2 pilots but only 1 airplane, the cost is shared between them, essentially splitting the rental cost in half. Okay, so I hope everyone enjoyed that interview. When you look at the average cost of getting a commercial pilot's license, the very super low, like generous end is maybe around $50,000. So to do it for $30,000 is totally awesome, and I think it's very inspirational to people who are looking to get their commercial pilot's license, myself included. Okay guys, so if you're interested in training here at the Flight Academy at Van Nuys Airport, I'm going to leave some information and links down in the video description below where you can get more information about the training and the rates and so forth. So guys, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video and the interview, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.